All right, next we have forest management for early succession wildlife. So let me pull that up.
All right, so while he's pulling that up, my name is Matthew Hurd. I'm the Eastern Regional Forester for the Maryland Forest Service. A lot of what I'm going to be talking about here briefly is Bob set it up with all the different talk about early successional. We're the axe on that on that part. So what I want to do for my speed talk real quick is just talk about some of the terms you hear about harvesting. Quickly define those, and then show you guys some really cool aerial photographs of sites that have been a success. And this will kind of set the stage for the case study talk that Bob and John and I are doing later. So real quick, I just want to talk about why we harvest and what we do. Forestry is all about managing sunlight for a given objective, really. And we talked about there's two different types of succession, early succession. There's the transitional, where we know it's only going to be early successional habitat for those few years, and we're going to turn it into a forest product. Or there's the what I call permanent early successional habitat, where we're managing the disturbance in perpetuity. For the longest time, our early successional habitat species were maintained by our forest markets. We had enough mills, we had enough markets, we were doing enough timber sales because the landowners wanted that income, and as a result, we on the landscape we're creating plenty of early successional habitat. Not the greatest, but enough to sustain these populations as farming practices and different things changed. So we were really, providing that not as the primary driver, but as a secondary driver. Over the last 20 years, in Maryland, a lot of our forest markets have declined. Our number of timber sales have declined, and if you look at our forest cover data, overwhelming percentage of the state is in the over 70-year-old. So early successional habitat, really important. So cue the introduction of landowners being really, really interested in this. And so, basically I wanted to talk about, types of good harvests, types of bad harvests. Good harvests, how many times have you ever heard somebody say clear cutting is a good harvest, right? It is. It's a regeneration harvest. Depending on your objectives, you're resetting that successional clock that Bob talked about earlier. And we're doing that through different ways, whether we're in loblolly pine or mixed hardwoods. We're doing different types of harvests where we're removing all the merchantable timber, from saw timber to pulpwood to everything, and just resetting that clock. Maybe a bad harvest has happened and the landowner needs to hit the reset button. There's a lot of reasons other than money that people do clear cuts. So I wanted to kind of clear the air about clear cuts first of all. And then depending on somebody's objectives, we have seed tree harvests where you take out almost all the trees. You're just leaving enough trees to provide a seed source of the species you want in the next forest. Shelter wood is when you need a little more shade for that desired species, so you leave a few more trees per acre in your harvest. And then lastly, in our hardwood stands, you can do single tree or group selection, where you're just removing groups of trees or single trees to promote maybe, you want more oaks on your property, you want more mast, whatever your goal is. But these are the types of harvests, when you hear people talking to you about those, you can kind of say, all right, yes, I've heard of that before. That's the good stuff. If you ever hear anybody talking about diameter limit cutting or high grading, those are the bad harvests. That's where you're essentially taking the best, leaving the rest. And that's from an economic standpoint, but also from an ecological standpoint. You're leaving the stuff that is generally poor for wildlife, poor for the ecology, and you end up with forests that just aren't doing the proper ecological services that you want. So I just wanted to take a couple minutes there and talk about that. And because a lot of what we're going to be speaking about the rest of the day, the case studies we're doing, we're going to be talking about managed early successional habitat. So I wanted to take a minute and say, what does success look like? So on the Eastern Shore, outside of Federalsburg, you've got an area where the Chesapeake Forest Lands and the Idlewild WMA come together. This is what it looked like in 2009. Then our people and Bob's people got together, and over the course of 10 years on our different groups, I meant to have a laser. So on the left, under the 2011, you'll see that we did a really, really heavy thinning that could be called a seed tree cut in other parts of the state. And we did 2 different densities and ran fire through there. And the amount of rare, threatened, and endangered plants, the amount of birds, everything started to immediately increase. What we also started doing was on our adjoining lands, we started doing our normal forest management activities. So in the middle picture, to the south and to the west, you'll see we did a commercial thinning of loblolly pine. And to the east, you'll see some, I believe that was some harvest work on the WMA and the hardwood stand. That's to the northeast there. And then once you get over here to 2018, you'll see that there's also been a wildlife cut done to the north. So just in less than 10 years, because of collaboration in markets, markets is a big driver here. Nobody had to pay someone to do this work. Somebody came and got this. I'm not saying we made a lot of money off of it. Make no mistake, that is a trade-off. But you can see the progression when you look in the center from the very first cut that was done, how that's grown up and stayed in a vegetative state. I believe that's been on a 2 to 3 year burning rotation. And how we've still got our productive loblolly pine stand that is mainly for forest products to the southeast and the west. And then we've got hardwoods there. And then we're going to have, well, by now, I didn't have a new topo to show, or aerial to show that stand to the north, but it's being managed as well. Has that been burned, Bob? Or Chris, either y'all know?
There's one block on the right.
Yeah. Excellent. And then another case is right across the creek from where we're doing our case study talk later. This is on the Nanticoke WMA, and we've got lands across the creek, but back in 2014, so this is what it looked like previously. Keep your eye on that road. So when I pull these 2 pictures up, you'll see different densities on the picture in the left between the north half and the south half. So the south half is a loblolly pine stand. The northern half is on more of a sand hill, and it's oak hickory. So don't think that our examples only work on loblolly pine on the eastern shore. This was done in both hardwoods and loblolly pine. So you can see the different density of trees there. But as we fast forward over 3 years and a couple of burns later, you can see there's areas where it's a little more open and there's green, and then there's areas where the trees are coming up and you can still see a good bit of vegetation underneath. But I wanted to stress that cost share programs and having markets to do the work are critical. So if you're a landowner or a public land manager that's never done these things, please reach out to the Forest Service. Please reach out to Wildlife Service and NRCS. We're here to help you get through this, and you always have to do this with the end game in mind. We haven't really talked about invasive species today, but we talk about managing sunlight. The second you introduce sunlight to somewhere, there's either an invasive species coming in, or you may not know what the existing seed bank was. I forget who mentioned seed banks for 10 or 20 years, but yeah, as soon as you introduce sunlight, you're going to get something you didn't expect at some point. So you always have to be ready to how are you going to control that future vegetation when you don't know what that future vegetation might be. So you always have to be adaptable, and you always have to have a rough idea of what you want it to look like, because if you have a concrete idea of exactly what you want it to look like, you will be disappointed. So that's my 7 minutes. There's my emails, and I think we'll do questions later. So that's a quick primer on forest management.